Welcome to the Consulting Growth Podcast. I'm Professor Joe Omani, CEO of Equity Sherpa. We help owners of consultancies quadruple the equity value of their firms over a 2 to 4 year period. If you'd like to know how we do this, visit equitysherpa.com. Okay, welcome back to the Consultancy Growth Podcast. I have the pleasure today to be joined by Anish Patel, who started, grew and sold Patel Miller to Metis a couple of years back, and has an interesting story of what happened before that. You've had a lot of experience, Anish. So starting off, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, could you give us a bit of I was looking at your profile, and you've had an interesting journey, firstly into consultancy and then through consultancy. Your experience with some of the big firms, but you started off somewhere very different, didn't you?
I certainly did. When I was going through school, college, and at university, I was a physics geek. I still am, I suppose, in my spare time. And I wanted to apply physics in something that I thought would be really useful. And medical physics was a really, really interesting field. So I managed to complete my degree in physics, my undergrad, and then managed to get onto a very interesting scheme where I got paid to do a part-time master's and also train as a medical physicist in hospitals.
Wow!
By actually doing the job. So it was a wonderful opportunity. One of the things that I first experienced was, although hospitals are amazing places and they do wonderful things now more than ever, day one of working in a hospital, I realized I hated working in a hospital, which is a bit of a deal breaker for a medical physicist. But I plowed through the course because I did enjoy it and I did see some amazing things and work with some great people. But it was really then that I realized that medical physics really wasn't the career for me.
Am I right in saying it was Accenture that you went to after the Olympics, was it?
It was, or it was Anderson Consulting. I'm now running my age. But around came 1996 when I thought, well, what can I go away and do if medical physics isn't the thing for me? And I researched lots and lots of different things. And this thing that I never really knew existed called management consultancy popped up. And I looked into it. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that actually it is the scientific method. And the scientific method was something that really I was interested in. One of the core things about physics. You identify an issue or an opportunity. You gather lots of data around that. You speak to lots of people to understand that data. You develop hypotheses. You test those hypotheses with people. You develop conclusions, and then you convince people that those conclusions are the right thing. And so I realized that my brain was wired to understand and execute the scientific method. And it'll be a relatively easy switch. Turn that to business and to turn that to solving business issues or finding business opportunities. The management consultancy suddenly piqued my interest. And as a 22-year-old going out into the world, I also thought that they're quite highly paid, certainly more highly paid than medical physicists will ever be paid. And that had its draw as well. So I looked out for lots of different companies, got a few interviews, and I found Anderson Consulting. Went for a few interviews, met a few people there, felt like home, and ultimately had the pleasure of them offering me a job. So at the back end of 1996, I started at Anderson Consulting.
Were you one of the? I think the transition from Anderson Consulting to Accenture probably created more independent consultancies than any other event in the Western world. Were you part of the cohort that left during that rebuild, shortly after that change in ownership?
Yes, it was. So I left there in 2005. So the move from Anderson Consulting to Accenture had already happened.
Yep.
And at that time, I was running the UK's retail strategy practice within Accenture. And it was a great place. The cohort from there are now, all over industry and got some really big roles. And it was certainly at that time when post-IPO, I've been at Anderson Consulting, Accenture now, almost 10 years. And I thought it's time to take a bit of a break. So I left without a real view of what I wanted to go away and do, but took a career break and managed to travel around and live in a ski resort and do all the things that I never really found the time to do.
Now you put a hook out there earlier, and I'm going to bite it because I'm very interested. We won't go too much into it because we might bore the listeners, but I'm very interested in the extent to which consultancy is a science, and obviously there are some limitations. You can't run experiments, you can't repeat experiments. It's not a laboratory conditions, but obviously there are some things that tend to work. And we can sometimes find those things out through, studying interventions. With your physicist or your science hat on, to what extent have you found in your experience, to what extent have you been disappointed with consultancy or organizations as a basis for science in terms of predictability, knowing what's going to happen and generally being right about interventions? Have you ever been disappointed and thought that didn't go the way I expected, despite having the experience and the knowledge and the studies and all the rest of it behind you?
Lots of times things have not gone right, actually. And I think there's probably a couple of reasons why. And there's probably a couple of things that you have to do to react. The reasons why are, I always find that the consultancy side or the advisory side is really a balance between art and science. And so science will only get you a certain way. And there's always got to be a rational, data-led lens of all of the work that we do. People, our clients, will expect us to know the facts. They'll expect us to know the data. They'll expect us to know where that data comes from. And so that's really a basis for all of the work that we have to do. On top of that, then there is the art of storytelling. And that's really when you position the so what and the insights and the what next from the data to really engage and convince and lead and challenge our clients. And that's really two different components. So the science is really the rational component. And I think there's also a political component and there's also an emotional component to everything that we do. And you have to take all three of those things into account. More so lately a social component as well. But taking all three or four of those things into account when we're really developing actions and insights from our work has got to come through. And if it doesn't, then sometimes you can disappoint. The second thing where we can be disappointed is we do a wonderful piece of work taking all of that thing into account. When it comes to implementation, we forget the people component. And people don't always react in the way in which we expect them to react. And if we lose sight of that, then a lot of the times our actions and implementations may not go as well as we hope to. So so what of how we react to that, then clearly the counter to both of those things. Make sure when we're interrogating a project, we look at all aspects of the project and not just what the data is telling us. That will tell us a lot and it will get us up to speed really, really quickly. But there are a whole wealth of inputs and influences outside of the data that we have to take into account. And the second is always the voice of the business, the voice of the colleague, whatever you want, the voice of the customer. Make sure that you're always thinking about implementation when you're developing your plans. And if you don't, you will add time and you will cost a lot of money and not deliver the value that you expect to.
That's great. Well, thank you. That's really nice insights. And I was just thinking as you were talking, a lot of people might have said, well, this doesn't sound like science at all. But what's interesting is if you read histories of science, all of the stuff you're talking about in terms of politics and convincing and storytelling, it works in science as well. There's a lot of great discoveries that haven't come to the fore immediately, sometimes taking a century, because the story wasn't right and the politics weren't right.
Absolutely. There's a lot of what we do that is just research for pure research, and you'll find an application at a later stage.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, yeah. Whilst you were talking, it reminded me of a conversation I was having yesterday, actually, with someone. And we were talking about whether very bright people struggle when being leaders of consulting firms or indeed any firms. Now, you're clearly very bright. You've managed to make that jump, and you've got the physics, and you've got the business side of things as well. I'm thinking, obviously, when I mention names, I'm thinking of 2 or 3 leaders of consultancies who sometimes get caught up in their own head, who have, especially if they haven't done, had a very practical background, where they tend to get caught up in overthinking rather than just get on with it, 80/20 implementation.
Without a doubt. And, that's that classic analysis paralysis. You can think far too much about something.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot in the DNA of a consultant that encourages that. Certainly, if I think through my upbringing as a management consultant through Anderson, Accenture, and other places, the method was quite a key component of everything that we did. And you had this beautiful and elegant 12-week multi-track plan that you'd execute precisely, out of which would spit a wonderful piece of insight, analysis, or next step.
Yep.
And that's inbuilt. If you go back to the early days of Anderson Consulting, we used to call it the business integration methodology. And it was a huge encyclopedia of whatever the business problem, there was a method to solve that business problem.
Yep.
And that encourages analysis. Of course it does, because as young consultants, we don't have the industry expertise to know and feel what the right answer is or what the best answer is, but we're encouraged to learn a method. And sometimes the brightest people execute that method better than anyone else that you could possibly imagine. But sprinkling in the things that are outside of that method that may influence the outcome are things that sometimes you overlook.
Yeah.
You can be too method focused. And over time, you learn that method is important, but applying that method in the 50 different scenarios that you've applied it, the method becomes the secondary point as a sense check to know that you're looking at all of the different components.
Yes.
But if you lead with method, you can very quickly do a lot, but stop thinking.
Yeah.
And our clients typically pay the rates that we look for, not just because we're great doers. Our clients have lots and lots of great doers. Where we really need to differentiate ourselves is great thinking based on that doing. And so, yes, sometimes, and always, I suppose the second point is definition of brightness. I suppose there's very, very different definitions of brightness. But if you come back to the analytical brain, yes, there's very, very bright and analytical people that focus on the analysis rather than focus on the so what.
Yes.
And our job as leaders in consulting is to balance the two.
Yes. And also to, and I criticize myself here because it's something I very much struggled with when I jumped from, because I went degree, master's, PhD, then consulting. And so I had this lovely, protected academic space for years where I could take 4 years to do a PhD and nobody used an eyebrow. And it was something I certainly struggled with was, getting stuff done, even if it wasn't perfect. And I've dealt with quite a few, physicists or PhDs or, and I think it's also a safe space. So with analysis, it's all logical and you've got the numbers, you're in front of the computer. People and clients and problems are messy when you get stuck into them, and it can be quite uncomfortable for some people.
It really can. It reminds me of a very live example, actually, where we're working with a wonderful client doing a really, really important piece of work. And we set out a 3-phased approach. Phase 1 is to collect the data set. Phase 2 is to interrogate it and look for opportunities and develop some hypotheses. Phase 3 is to then turn that into an action plan. And it's amazing how you can set out expectations for a project or a program in this very well thought through way.
Yeah.
When you get into it, everyone always jumps to phase 3 in phase 1.
Yes.
and understanding that is really, really important. And, even now, sometimes I forget to understand that and then it causes extra work. But
we love solving things as consultants, don't we? And it is always very tempting to jump to, the recommendations because it's instinctual and you kind of feel it.
Absolutely. And the executives of our clients, they're not really interested in phase 1 and 2. They'll take that for granted. They want to know phase 3.
Yes.
So, there's always a pull to tell me the so what quite early on in projects.
Yeah, Anish, thank you for allowing me to take us off on a slight diversion there. But I find it fascinating, this sort of the social and political aspects of what we do. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about how and why you started Patel Miller, but also the journey of growth itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at Deloitte, so I used to run Deloitte's UK retail consulting practice, and I had a personal tragedy in my life, which was a big event, and it caused me to really think about what I was doing, where I was going, and what I really wanted to achieve. And Deloitte is a wonderful company, a wonderful business, and the option was always to go back to Deloitte. But at that point, I really thought, well, I've set practices up for other people. It's about time I set practice up for myself.
Yep.
And luckily, Jonathan Miller, a very good friend of mine, was also thinking something at the same time. He was working for a different business. And we thought, let's start our own business. And that was really the kernel of it. It could have been anything. It could have been making widgets on a factory line. It could have been, we looked at lots and lots of different businesses, something in the cycle industry, something in the fashion industry, lots and lots of different things. And we had a bit of an aha moment, which was, well, we know consulting, we know retail. Why don't we build a retail consultancy? And so that's what we did. We flipped a coin, and it was Patel Miller rather than Miller Patel. And we wrote on the back of a napkin a bit of a business plan as to how we might get this thing going.
I presume that you both had non-compete clauses, which must have made it a little bit difficult to start.
Well, that was one of the factors that made it a bit easier than otherwise. We didn't really have any non-competes because I'd already been out of work for a few months.
Right.
And Deloitte are a wonderful, very understanding business. Jonathan was working for a retailer at the time, so he was already out of his non-competes. And so actually we thought, well, look, we know a good network. We've got something to say. We feel as though there's a gap in the market opening up for industry specialists and boutiques. And so we thought, well, why don't we just go away and do it? So as I mentioned, wrote the business plan, found the URL was available for patelmiller.com.
Excellent.
Built the website, and then started immediately going to talk to clients about what we were going to do and seeing if there was any interest to work with us.
Now, it's quite a challenge. I realize this because how I started off in consulting consultancies was my friends in the large firms often bumped up against partner, didn't quite make it, left, started their own firms, and then were quite shocked about how tough it was starting your own firm as opposed to, having a queue of clients because you work at, McKinsey or Deloitte or whoever. What challenges did you have? What was surprising jumping from a well-known branded firm to a startup?
The way I put it is that I thought I was one of the best salesmen of consultancy in the retail industry out there. And I'm not an arrogant person, but I did think I was quite good.
Yeah.
What I realized when I started my own firm with a name that nobody knew, although they knew me, was there are two parts to selling great consulting work and working with great clients. The first is originating opportunities, and the second is converting on those opportunities. What I realized when I had my own name on my own business was that I was brilliant at the second, but I wasn't very good at the first. And the reason why was that I never really had to originate work.
Yes.
In that the brand and the network of the big consultancies is the origination engine. So if you are looking for a new strategy piece of work, you can bet the first 3 or first 5 organizations that you go out to ask for their opinion are the names that you recognize. You're not going to go to a Patel Miller.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that I realized was that, yes, this is harder than I thought. That said, it did take me about a year to realize that.
Okay.
And the reason being was that the clients where I was originating work and knew me well, and I'd worked for a very long time with various different hats on, they were really, really open to working with Patel Miller. And so actually on day one of being in business, I managed to convert quite a well-known client. I won't say who they were. That paid us quite a lot of money.
Excellent.
But that we'd work with them over the next 6 months and we'd figure out how to fill that order book. And so we had, a healthy bank balance of day one of being in business. And we managed to convert on 3 cornerstone clients. for the first 18 months of being in business. So actually the first year to 18 months, it was relatively easy, actually, which rolled me into a false sense of security.
Yes, it's a common thing, actually, where, very often people can sell to, friends, family, old colleagues, old clients.
Absolutely.
Once that dries up, it's a different kettle of fish.
Absolutely. And it wasn't really a question of it drying up. It was a question of we'd grown around the expectation of that curve continuing.
Yep.
Suddenly the liquidity in the business and the salary bills at the end of every month are pretty significant.
Yes.
And that next phase of growth to really drive profitability is the thing that's really hard to come by.
How did you overcome that challenge? How did you shift from, I've got these nice, safe clients who can, pay me well, to saying, well, I need to go and find new ones? What worked there?
What worked? The first thing was me changing my mindset of what the role of a partner or managing partner actually is.
Okay.
And, we have to do everything, and there's 100 things that we have to do. But the differentiating factor for the managing partner or the founder is bringing new clients and keep the team happy. And you can do 25 different things, but if you're not doing those two things, you won't grow, you won't be profitable, and you won't be successful.
Yep.
That causes a lot of other implications for the expectations on the rest of the team. Confidence in delivering the work that we're delivering, confidence that we'll get that next piece of work when it's an ongoing process, confidence that we'll find new people, and we have the right benchmarks for hiring great team.
Yep.
And all of those sorts of things. But the origination engine, I'll go back to the two parts of selling consultancy. That origination engine is something that nobody else in the organization will do.
Yep.
And if you're not doing it, then it's not going to get done. Yep. And I think the realization that I had to focus my efforts, firstly, to build a great team around me, to give confidence that the business will run and we'll have great clients and happy clients.
Yep.
But that relentless focus on going out to find new work, building the network, was something that I had to shift to quite quickly.
Okay.
Okay. That was quite a big realization.
Did you get into the content marketing thing, or was it you picking up the phone, going for dinners and introducing yourself to people at events?
The latter, primarily, but we had to do a bit of the former.
Yep.
And balancing the two was quite interesting. When no one knows your name and no one knows who you are, it's one thing getting an introduction to that person, either through your own network or referrals, or running events and drinks receptions and dinners and breakfasts and all of those sorts of things. But the first thing that person is going to do when your name comes across them is look you up. And so to have good content and to have good points of view on the website through LinkedIn and all of those sorts of things is really, really important. No one's going to stumble across you and say, oh, I must call these people to talk to me about retail operating models. Yep. However, if your name does come across their desk through the network, chances are they are going to look you up. So having a credible point of view and an interesting point of view and a well thought through website and content is really, really key. Yeah. Second piece for that is when you're going out to find and build your team. The first thing that a lot of these people will do is look you up on the internet. And so, the way in which the business comes across through the website is really, really important.
Yes, it's interesting. So I've noticed this kind of pushback on content marketing, SEO, and a few other things with founders. The logic seems to be that if we can't compete with Deloitte when it comes to SEO, so there's no point doing blogs and thought leadership. But as you say, consultancies compete in two markets. One is for clients, one is for employees, and neither of them are going to hire or be hired without going and checking you out.
No, absolutely. So I think, like you say, don't try to compete with them on quantity.
Yes,
because you'll lose.
Yes.
But try to compete on quality.
Yeah,
and try to find the point based on your own strengths where you have a really, really individual and unique point of view.
Okay. So listen, we've talked about one of the struggles that you had in terms of overcoming that pipeline challenge. I'd also like to talk about something that you were particularly proud of or worked particularly well during the growth period, because obviously listeners are probably, many of them will be at the stage you were at 6 or 7 years ago, and be thinking about especially in today's environment, can they do that worked for you?
Oh gosh, that's the big question, right? And I think if I take that in two parts, so some of the proudest moments through the Patel Miller years when I was building that firm, I think taking a step back and the things that remind you that you're doing something right and you're doing something successful and you're making a real difference to your team and clients were probably the proudest moments. And there's probably a few through the 10 years in which I built that firm. The one which was more reoccurring was every year. So my industry focus is retail and consumer. So every year we used to host an anniversary event to just celebrate that we made it through another year and we were still in business. And we used to invite lots and lots of people from industry leaders from retail and consumer to, a really informal but really, enjoyable and fun drinks reception. And it was always one of the most stressful things that we did through the year, because there's the expectation of, are they going to come? Who's going to be there? I hope it goes well on the night and the logistics. But actually always taking a step back. And every year, that anniversary event, I always used to be reminded when I see a room of about 100 people who really want to know or feel part of the story of growth of Patel Miller, and actually feel some emotional attachment to the little business that we'd set up. That used to be annually the most proud moment of the year.
Lovely.
Because we used to, when we used to run events at the big consultancies, we'd probably get a 5 or 10% acceptance rate. We used to get a 40 to 50% acceptance rate to this event.
Yeah.
And it became one of the events on the retail calendar.
Oh, that's nice.
People wanted to go because they knew they were going to have fun. They knew they were going to meet lots of people that they know and that they hadn't seen for the last year. And it was just things like that reminded me that we're doing something right and we are successful and we're punching well above our size and weight with their voice.
It's also reassuring because, I don't know about you, but, I think consultancy is full of insecure overachievers. And, when you're part of a big firm, you're doing well because you're getting a fat bonus and, you're getting the feedback all the time. But when you're running your own firm, it can be quite a lonely experience, can't it?
It's very lonely. It really is very lonely at times. And of course, there's a great team around you and you can share the load. But ultimately, it's like any, the buck stops with you.
Yes.
And there's lots of people who are relying on you for a career and for enjoyment and for development. And actually, that's a huge pressure as well. And so at times it can feel very lonely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And skipping to the second bit of the question, what, in terms of the growth of the firm and, your successes with clients, what worked, whether it was, it might be something quite small in terms of, a competency framework or a bonus system, or it could be, something to do with leadership or culture. Were there any things that you thought, that was a good decision, that?
I think the main thing was, if I describe it with 3 A's, and this applies to both the team and also our clients. One of the principles of Patel Miller's and one of the values, the core values that we had, our first core value actually was that we are in business for the well-being of our people.
Sure.
And that permeated through the organization and permeated with the way in which we worked, actually, that we are an asset-based business. And looking after those, suddenly they'll look after the clients and we'll take it from there. And I think finding the thing that our clients and our team really wanted was that personal touch. And that really is the 3 A's, as I put it. And the first is availability. And it's really being there at the client or with your team when they need you and responding really, really quickly to their needs. And the second is then amiability. So doing it in the right way and doing it in a friendly way. I had when I was very junior at Accenture, Anderson. I had a very senior client and he gave me some amazing advice. And he said, don't be one of those consultants that becomes a friend in the 6 months of the project and you forget the next day.
Yep.
And then I hear from you again in 3 years' time when you want to sell me something.
Yep.
And actually that amiability is really, really key in that just keeping, whether you're working with clients and team or not, just keeping in contact, being interested in them, they will be interested in you, and just chatting about industry or trends or business or moves or colleagues and friends is really, really key.
Yep.
The amiability side is really, really key. And then the third thing is ability, but there's lots of people with ability, but actually going above and beyond, as I mentioned, moving away from method and moving to experience is really, really key. And I think that's a real differentiator for the smaller boutique type firms, in that you can over-represent on all three of those dimensions at once. We can be faster, we can be more industry specific, and actually the expectation of working one-to-one with our clients will be much, much higher.
Great, thank you. That's really. I wrote those down as you were talking, because I really like them. I'm teaching I get my students going, my MBA students going out to local charities acting as consultants. So if it's okay with you, I'll give them the 3 A's.
Of course.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, really useful. Okay, so you've got the firm, you've grown the firm. You're perhaps looking. Well, you were looking at an exit. What was it about? Did you go through a formal sort of broker or bank process where you go through you do the beauty parade? Or there's something about Metis that you thought actually, this just works?
Well, it was, if I take a step back from that, we never really had an exit in mind.
Okay.
But actually there was an event. So Jonathan Miller left the firm.
Right.
And so it was really at that point, and I'll go back to it's a lonely place to be. It was lonely when it was Jonathan and I.
Yes, sure.
It was even lonelier when Jonathan left the firm.
Yes.
Good news is we're both still great friends and we both still work together.
Well, that's something, and not always the case, as you know.
Exactly. But it was a very amicable split, and and we remain great friends, and we still work together today in different ways. It was really at that point where I thought, what do I want to do with this business? And I really had two questions in my mind. Can I run this business by myself? And do I want to keep running this business by myself?
Yeah.
I ran it for another 18 months. And so I'd proven that I could run it, but it felt a little bit more lonely.
Yeah.
And actually it was really the implications on the team that I had. Where's the next big wave of growth going and coming from for the team? And at that time, for a long time, digital and data had been big areas of investments of our clients, and that would have taken many millions to build a capability to be credible in those spaces. And so I thought, look, we do some great work, but who is going to provide me and the team with that next wave of growth? Yeah. So to answer a specific question, I didn't go through a broker. We did have quite a few inbound calls from other businesses. Yeah. I'd never really entertained them, but because of those two reasons, I started to entertain those conversations. And a business called Metis came along, and I met the people, and that's really what started the process.
Right.
There were other options as well through that process, but Metis clearly became the front runner quite quickly.
Well, you also probably saved yourself $500,000 in terms of not going through a bank.
Indeed.
It's not a cheap process. Okay, now I know a bit about Metis, but if you could tell us a little bit about Metis and how it is either similar to or different to what you were experiencing before joining. So
it's a wonderful firm. I'm still here, having been here for just over 4 years now. So it's a fantastic firm, and it was really the opportunity that Metis gave the team. Which was the draw. Firstly, it was all around the people. The three founders that I met got on really, really well with them. The growth trajectory that the business had been on over a relatively short space of time. I think Metis and Patel Miller started about the same sort of time.
Okay.
Metis is now about 1,100 people.
Wow.
So it's seen stratospheric growth over that period. And the opportunity within Metis was really, really clear. So Metis had big, established offices and practices throughout Europe, but nothing really in the UK.
Okay.
So Patel Miller was acquired, and it really became the kernel of growth for the UK practice. But it still felt like that small community, albeit within a bigger organisation.
Yeah.
So there were many similarities on the culture and the people and the aspiration side of things. There were many similarities in the overlap of what we did and where we did it. So a big advisory practice within Metis, that's me, and a big focus. A lot of our clients are in retail and consumer. So there was a big overlap there in terms of what we did and how that could support Metis and how Metis could support the growth of the UK practice within that.
Okay.
And then the differences, which were really complementary, were a big data solutions practice and a big digital practice. So being able to expand what I can talk to my clients about was really, really key. And I think that's one of the key things with a successful integration is finding those elements of complement and finding those elements of incremental. And having both of those things really helps, businesses integrate and then grow.
Yes. And it often, I think it's often founders or owners who sell assume that the buyer has done their homework and they have an integration plan and it's fine. And it's, in half the cases, it's simply not the case. And even when they do it, they're going to miss things.
Absolutely. The expectations of going into the deal will be very, very different. The one thing that's guaranteed, it will be very different expectations on the other side. And reacting to that is going to be quite critical, actually.
Yes. And do you have any other advice for people, sort of potentially, coming up to a sale and, they're obviously focused on the sale and not perhaps the earn out. But that post-deal phase from a founder's perspective who might be, joining the buyer for, between 2 to 5 years. Do you have any advice on making that work above and beyond, hitting the targets if you can?
Oh gosh, any advice? I think the earnout is obviously, or the overall deal shape is obviously quite critical. The one thing that I found was that the more I focused on that, the less I focused on the things which are really going to execute against that deal shape, which is me going out to market, finding new clients, delivering great work and building a team and building a positive and cash flow and profitable and growing revenue business. And at times I was too distracted by the deal shape and the equation for earnout rather than really, and that takes a lot of brain power, actually. And I'll come back to expectations pre-deal and post-deal. Your brain power is only 100%. Where you invest that brain power is going to be quite critical. I was investing a lot in the deal shape and not enough on the things that are really going to make that deal shape successful.
Yeah, that's really good advice. But it's hard to do, isn't it? Because
without doubt.
You don't want to get strung up because you've missed some small print in the contract or you haven't, guaranteed, investment or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. A good lawyer through that process is worth their weight in gold. That's one of the things I realized, actually, the first real interaction of a good lawyer who can help you through that process to understand the paper versus the reality is quite a key thing. The second thing with against pre and post deal expectations that my Patel Miller was acquired on the 1st of February 2020, and a few days later COVID happened, and so that really was quite an interesting thing in that period.
Oh gosh, well done.
Well, indeed.
Okay, and what does the future hold? What's the obviously Metis has had a good few years, certainly compared to the rest of the market. So I'm guessing it's an exciting, positive place to be.
It's very exciting and a very positive place to be for a number of reasons. One, people here are fantastic, and if you enjoy working with the people around you, then everything becomes easier. And that's really the starting point. That's why I did the thing in the first place, and that's why I'm still here. The growth aspirations we have as a business are really, really exciting, and so that's great to be part of. I've expanded my role within Metis as well, so I still run the UK practice, but I also run advisory services, which is one of our big practices globally as well.
Yeah.
So I sit on the executive board. So that gives me good visibility of what's happening across the business. It gives me good influence as to how we're moving forward as a business. And so that helps me grow, and it challenges me as well. We're growing at a rate which is way above and beyond the market. And so we're definitely doing something right. And within the strategy of the organization, we've got a brilliant blend of advisory, digital solutions and data solutions. So not only have we got the 3-week, 3-month, 6-month advisory type programs, we also have a large proportion of our revenue is from longer term partnerships, where we're really having influence at our clients and really having gain share models where we succeed when we deliver great results for our clients.
Right.
And so actually the business model within Metis is really, really well suited. And we're just setting out our new strategy of growth over the next few years, which is really, really exciting. And it's a wonderful and exciting journey to be on.
That's great. That's great. I don't think people realize how hard, once you get to that size of sort of, around the 1,000 mark, it's difficult to grow. It's not, you have to be doing very good work, but plus balancing, managing the costs and all the bureaucracy that comes with, a bigger firm. So the fact that you're still growing at the rate you are is very impressive. You must be doing some things right.
We're definitely doing some things right. And if I think back over my career, there's always the threes. There's humps when you get to 3 people within a business, when you get to 30 people, when you get to about 300. And I'm still figuring out whether the next one's at about 1,000 people or 3,000 people, but I'll let you know when I know.
Yes.
But there are certain humps that you get to when you grow consulting practices that are really hard to get over, actually.
Yes.
But that's probably that you could spend a whole hour podcast just talking about those humps.
Well, I pretty much wrote my last book on those 3 humps. So, it's and that was 100,000 words, and I still felt I had more to say. Anish, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and wish you all the best for the future.
Yeah, thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.